Smelliest part of your body. So get 20% off plus free shipping with the promo code BIGHEADS, all caps, BIGHEADS at manscaped.com. Always use the right tools to get the job done. Your cojones will thank you. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code BIGHEADS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Please use BIGHEADS, all caps.
With the first pick overall, the New Jersey Devils are proud to select from the U.S. program, Jack Hughes.
Let's go, baby!
Plays it across, Vatanen drives, score! Sammy Vatanen let it rip. It's a power play goal, and the Devils have opened it up. Nico walking in, shooting, score! Nico Hischier on the rush, ends it in overtime, and the Devils win it in Montreal.
Well, good evening. It's Jersey Joe and
Jersey Jim. How are we feeling tonight? We feeling rejuvenated? We feeling refreshed? We feeling time
Relaxed?
to relax? Celebration? Party? I don't know.
Celebrate with seltzers, baby. I'm not sure if we could go that far.
Well, I mean, some of us might celebrate with a seltzer. I mean, for those who don't understand that, well, you're going to have to come to Snapchat and find out what that's all about.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to snap and chat, I mean, there's a lot to talk about with Corey Masisak's article that I was just quoting what he wrote, and tell me what you think. He was basically writing from what Ratio says. I'll have a list that will be wide-ranging. I usually have a list anyway, whether it's for assistant coaches, coaches in the minors, or scouts or trainers. we will see. We know at the end of the year, there's more possibilities and opportunities. I think in the short term, I want to see where this goes and get a better feel for it, get a better feel of our team and our players. Ray Shiro.
I mean, look, Ray Shearer's talking about Ali Nazarene, and for those that have not been around or were under a rock or out in outer space or wherever you were,
Watching the Giants and Jets.
suck. The Devils relieved John Hines of his duties as head coach yesterday prior to the game against Las Vegas. It was a long time coming. And the tipping point was Saturday against the Rangers, and it just boiled over into whatever you want to call it Monday night against
Basically,
Sabres.
the camel's back was broken versus Buffalo.
Yeah, there was no way he was making it to
Vegas.
that game. Was not happening. You couldn't feed him to the Wolves. The fans were calling for blood already. I mean, Saturday they were chanting "Fire Hines." You just couldn't. It would have been unfair for him to go into that building.
It would have been hostile.
It just would have been a hostile environment.
Or as old coach Peter DeBoer would say, it's a tough building.
Yeah, it is a tough building, especially when you're underperforming.
I will have to say this: when you're underperforming, you're looking for candidates that could possibly be suited for possible head coaching, assistant coaching for the New Jersey Devils. So I want to hit on Corey Massasak's assessment. You tell me. I'm going to do a rank 'em.
Okay.
You're going to rank each one of these guys.
Okay.
So he put down Nasruddin Kowalski, Ken Hitchcock, Patrick Eliash, Mike Vellucci, Jay Leach, Rocky Thompson, Tony Granato, John Wroblewski, someone who I mentioned, Mike Yeo, Dan Bylsma, Jay Woodcroft, and Todd Nelson.
All right. Well, the first guy that's probably going to be on the board at the top guy is probably Bylsma, because Shiro and Bylsma have been linked since their days in Pittsburgh.
Is he your number one?
I would say he's my number one, just because, like I said, the ties are there. Ray Shiro went to bat for this guy. Ray Shiro lost his job in Pittsburgh because he wouldn't fire Dan Bylsma. So that's how much respect he has for Bylsma.
Now, Rick Kowalski, where would you put him?
I'd
1
probably
through
put
10.
him. I'd
2
probably
through
put
10.
him. I'd probably put him middle of the pack.
You saying number 5?
I'd probably say like a 4 or 5 spot.
I'll put him at 5.
All right, so we'll put him at 5. As far as the current interim head coach, which is Alain Nasruddin, I actually might put him around the 3 spot, because he's just taken over and you have to give him time.
So
And-
Nasruddin, you're putting at 3 spot?
Yeah, I'll give him a 3 spot because I want to see what he can do. And they only had one game last night. You're not going to expect much. He just was thrown into the game. They looked a lot better. They played better, but they still have a lot of work to do, especially defensively. The 2-hole goes to this guy, and his name, I like this guy, Tony Granato.
Granato, it is. I actually like Granato. I will reveal my 10 after you're finished.
All right, so Granato is in the 2-hole. So I like Granato there just because he's a guy, college guy. He understands the game.
Wisconsin University.
Wisconsin. He's also been with Shiro in Pittsburgh. So again, another connection. You put the dots together.
Do you think the Devils, if they hire him, they would trade for Luke Kunin?
They might. They just might.
I mean, if I recall correctly, he was drafted out of Wisconsin.
Yes.
Now
The
that number 4 spot afterwards.
4 spot is the guy you mentioned the other day. You just mentioned before.
Wroblewski?
Wroblewski. I do more research on him, and I like him. I like what he brings.
Yeah, I honestly think that there's a lot of dots that are very common with him. I do think there are a lot of similar DNA thoughts about his way he coaches the game, and there's a lot of youth going on that is in his favorability. Let's get to that 6th spot.
This is a name we've mentioned before on the podcast about coaching, which it wasn't in the article, but it's Guy Boucher at 6.
All right.
I'm going off the board here.
Okay, so you're doing what I call the hipster pick.
Exactly. It's a hipster pick. I just like, some about Boucher. He's, he's done it. He's shown he can do it in the National Hockey League.
Come to mention it, you just made me make him my number 11.
Okay.
Because I wasn't, thinking about him just now, but he's someone that I was thinking about. But who knows? He could be a candidate by Ray Shero because he's coached. I mean, he's been the opposing GM to him for years.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'd probably go Hitch 7.
Hitch?
Yeah.
Hitchcock it is.
Yeah.
The former
Dallas Stars, Stanley
Dallas
Cup,
Stars coach.
Edmonton Oilers.
The losing coach when Elias and Sikora scored at the old Meadowlands.
Yes.
Anyone who doesn't know, please look that one up on YouTube.
Great goal. Oh, my God, what a great goal that was.
Sikora was a bomb of a blast. Anyways, that number 8 pick that you have to select.
Who's left on the board?
Let's see. Elias, Leach, Rocky Thompson, Granato, Wroblewski, Balsma.
All right, so I have
Vellucci, Thompson.
So Thompson,
Yo.
Vellucci. All right, so Mike Yo at 8.
Yo Ho and a bottle of rum.
At 8. Then I'll have
Jay Woodcroft and Todd Nelson are the other names I didn't say.
I would probably put like Jay Leach and Elias 9-10 because I see more of those guys as assistants. And speaking of an assistant coach, because I have the television on right now, our buddy Scott Stevens, who we love, it would be a great assistant coach. I mean, there's definitely some things that need to be fixed for him to come back, no doubt. Because just the way he breaks down the game, if people haven't seen the clip on Twitter yet, NHL Network, last night Scott Stevens broke down what is plaguing the Devils defensively in regards to their breakouts, and it's the fact that they hold on to the puck too long in their zone. They need to get the puck up and out as quickly as possible. They try to circle back too much and hold on to the puck and have puck control in their own zone, which is a big no-no because this allows teams to forecheck again. Just get the puck up and out, start going north and south, and then have puck control in the offensive zone.
All right, so I kind of made a switch in my picks. So I'm going to release my top 11. I based Stevens on your 11. I had Pat. Okay, here's my head coaching tier, the 1 through 3. Patrick Elias. He's a guy who's respected. He's loved, and he's a guy that knows what it takes to play and be in an NHL locker room right off the bat.
Okay.
And you're in New Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, look, Elias, he's a great choice. The players respect him. They love the fact that when he comes in, he works with them on every asset aspect of the game. So he's a great choice. It's just the fact that do you just throw him into the Wolves right away without going through like the whole process of?
Well, speaking of Wolves and throwing in the fire right away, my number 2 is Dan Bylsma. I mean, it is common for Shiro to hit on former Penguins affiliate people or anyone who has been on his staff, and he's had a successful career getting them a Stanley Cup and having, really good centers in Crosby and Malkin. Now with Hughes and Heischer, I think this would be a cakewalk for him, even if it's in the roughest of shapes going into the next season.
Yeah, I agree with Bosma. I mean, it just makes sense. The optics, the everything, it just makes the most sense. That's the name that's out there.
Number 3, I put Granato. I think he's a fair, ideal, personnel. I think of a guy like him, you have a lot of experience with, kids who are at AHL level, skill in the college ranks at the D1 level, and Wisconsin University has gone through a rebuild themselves, and they're starting to get better. So I like the way things are looking, and also he's got relations with the Penguins, with Shiro and Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I like Granato. It's a great pick. There's a reason why he's coaching at Wisconsin. There's a reason why he was a candidate for several head coaching positions. Just what he brings to the table. He's similar to what Rick Tocchet is doing in Arizona with the Coyotes. That's why I think he'd be a great fit for the Devils.
And as in one of the notes from Corey Masisak writes, his results with the Badgers have been mixed, as I stated, though he has a somewhat indirect connection with Jack Hughes. 2 members of Granato's hyped freshman class are Jack's old roommate, Alex Turcotte, and line mate Cole Caulfield.
Yeah, I mean, look, right there, the USA connection. I mean, all those guys played together.
And this leads me to the switch over at number 4, John Wroblewski. He is someone I actually couldn't stop watching his coaching tactics for the U.S. National Development Program. Having kids like David Quinn coaching David Quinn and Ron Rolston. You have kids like Zegras, Matthew Boldy, I've talked about in another segment here. And I do think with these kids, probably the best birth year the U.S. hockey program has ever had since maybe the 1980s. You can blow that one out of the water almost.
Yeah. 100%.
And you can say.
Yeah, it's 100% correct. I mean, last year, if you look at it, the first round was littered with guys that would take him from the U.S. developmental program. I mean, it was unbelievable.
This is where later on somewhere not in December, but maybe after December, we'll get Anthony DiPaolo on to further explain that.
Yeah.
But now on to number 5 would be Rocky Thompson. So Thompson is someone that, we haven't heard a whole lot about, but he certainly has some interesting descriptions. As Corey Masisak wrote, he was with Chicago in the AHL, and he actually has a connection with Tyler Della, the VP of Analytics for the Devils. So there's a connection there. And the Devils have that going on.
That's good. I mean, you always need look when you're looking for a coach or you're looking for players to bring in. You always look for connections that are there. And hey, as we dive down deeper into these lists, maybe some of these guys become assistants. Maybe some of these guys go elsewhere. But There's going to be a name after we're done that I want to talk about, and maybe we can see maybe he fits into the mold someplace.
And then at 6, where I switched, is Jay Leach. Sure, he played his time with the Devils, but he also played with Scranton Wilkes-Barre. So, and he was under Sullivan after Hines departed for New Jersey. So, and it says here in his notes, after one season with the Baby Penguins, Leach became an assistant with the Providence Bruins. And he says he got the coaching job a year later and has led the Bruins to the Calder Cup playoffs in each of his first 2 seasons.
Hey, I mean, he's doing an unbelievable job in Boston with their Providence team. I mean, the fact that we talked about this the other night, we just hit on it real quick. The way that these guys draft, the way these guys develop, it's uncanny how these guys are so ready to play in the NHL right away.
And then you have these NHL-ready players who are veterans who are almost getting ready to retire, who have noticed this coach, and I've mentioned him not long ago, Ken Hitchcock. I have him at number 7. Hitchcock is someone, who knows how to be, a feisty one on the bench and argue with officials and, keep players accountable. And he knows what it's like to be in the playoffs and have success.
Yeah, I mean, look, Hitchcock is one of those guys that we might have seen his days maybe be numbered. Who knows if he's done or not. I mean, he said he was done after St. Louis, then he come back and go up to Edmonton. We'll see if he's done after what happened in Edmonton. He always figures out a way to get skilled guys to play defense and win.
That's a good thing, especially with the bottom 6 of the Devils. It's starting to gel a little bit more on the two-way game, but we need to see more consistency out of it. The next guy is someone that's the interim coach at number 8 is Alain Nasreddine. So with the way things look for the first start under him, I actually like the structure. I didn't want to put him up too high because I want to tamper my expectations.
Yeah.
Because I figured guys like Leach and Thompson and Granato have more experience than him. But at the same time, I felt the connection with Wroblewski kind of puts the connections a little bit more than Nasreddine, just because Nasreddine was at the AHL level until Nasreddine was recently hired a few seasons back to be with the Devils. So I just want to think that if you give maybe the next 70% of the season, you have to take into account that he's going to try and turn things around and Hines the team in the strategy and make sure things are a lot more fluid.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's one game. Knowing Shiro and knowing, how things are trending, and he's going to let these guys settle in. I mean, he just made the coaching change. They got to practice. They got to do film. They got to do all this stuff. It's not going to – new coach isn't going to happen overnight. And, I think he said it best yesterday when he's like, look, I got to let this settle. I got to let this breathe. I think he's going to give him the rest of the season before making a decision on whether or not to lift the interim tag or not.
And that brings me on to the next one. We're going out to the Central Division, if I'm correct. Mike Yeo with the Detroit Red Wings as the assistant coach. He got fired last year, as we all know, from the St. Louis Blues, where Craig Berube ended up winning the Stanley Cup. And we all know Mike Yeo from his time in Minnesota, where they've been fringe playoff teams and playoff teams constantly. And he's coached Zach Parise. He's coached other players like Jason Zucker. So he has good relations with those players, but I'm not sure if his play style certainly fits the Devils.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I mean, Yo was replaced last year. There were expectations last year on the team. They couldn't get it done, and then they bring Berube in. I mean, look, he's a coaching choice. I mean, it seems there's always a rotating door with these coaches, and carousel, same guys get on and off. But maybe you got to look for a new face.
The question is, how many quarters are going to put into his carousel? I'm just not sure if you're going to want to invest in that one.
Well, and here's the thing. I'll make the comparison. You look at the National Football League, for instance. You look at all these guys that are on the Belichick tree or, all these big-time coaches, and they're really great coordinators. But when they become a head coach, they're not good. But when they go back to their role as a coordinator, they're good. And maybe Mike Yeo is more suited to be an assistant than a head coach.
That's where I kind of see John Hines going to the next team if he is into head coach. So there are certain attributes of every other person out there. Speaking of assistant coaches, I wanted to hit on a guy at number 10 who has been known for his time in Binghamton before Mark Dennehy, and I just basically gave it away there. And Rick Kowalski running the power play, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, he ran the power play. He, it's funny because, Kowalski got the promotion from the club this season. His time in Binghamton, you look at the record, it was okay. It wasn't great.
It's nothing to
write home about.
Marvel home, yeah.
No, but I thought he did a good job with the talent that was there. So I think that's another guy that maybe could just settle in as an assistant somewhere.
I think he might stay an assistant with the Devils, but I think he might go elsewhere because I don't think his power play style suits the team. I think if he does get more experience with another organization, because he's been with the Devils for so long, I'm not sure if his style exactly fits our power play style, because the Devils over the years certainly fit the Adam Oates style of hockey and the Jeff Ward style. I wanted to put Jeff Ward in there, but I'm not sure if he's going to want to leave Calgary.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a tricky one with Calgary because he just got the interim tag since Bill Peters left. So that's a tough one. We all liked Jeff Ford when he was here. Everybody liked what he did, but that's a tricky one. That's tough.
So my hipster pick is actually a guy that you mentioned, and I mentioned multiple times on the podcast. Of course, I love the Trap, and this guy was in Switzerland coaching, because when he was relieved of his duties from the Senators, if I'm correct, a few years ago, when Eugene Malnick started to break down on the finances, I do see Guy Boucher as a guy, a really good sleeper pick that could come in under Ray Shero. And I remember one time against Tampa Bay that the Devils were doing a 1-3-1 trap in the neutral zone. It kind of worked, but it didn't, because the other three guys that were holding the blue line were not falling back properly to pinch against the boards against the Tampa Bay Lightning, but they still were able to clear the zone. But I would like to see a really good, strong defensive structured team.
Yeah, I would too. I think that's what they need. They need to learn how to break out. They need to learn how to get the puck going north-south instead of east-west, especially in their own zone. They need to get a little bit more structure back defensively. Just too many mistakes going on back there. Bad line changes. Can't make 5-foot passes. Can't really do anything right defensively. So yeah, I mean Boucher. I mean he's probably another name that's going to be looked at.
I think it's worth a bet.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's probably on the list. We hit on this the other day, and we talked about it last night, but we had some technical difficulties. I couldn't record it. But this guy, he's down in Binghamton right now, and he was an underrated Devils player. And I don't know how much respect the fans have for him or appreciate what he did. But a guy like Sergei Brylin could be an assistant coach type player, a guy that the Devils could look into.
Absolutely, especially with Nikita Gusev around and with Mikhail Maltsev coming up from Binghamton in the future. You want to have a Russian speaker who can also help them learn English at the same time with on and off the ice situations. So, and of course, it makes a lot of sense because the Devils drafted a couple of Russians over the past couple seasons, and Mikhail Maltsev and Nikita Okhotnyuk. So it's a great insurance plan on top of it, and you have a guy who understands the old Red Army style of hockey, but be able to translate it to the NHL level of today.
Yeah, and Sarge is one of those. He's one of the good guys, and he's doing a great job down in Binghamton for the Devils, and it's funny because I always say the Devils need to embrace their past, which they have, but I think they need to get more of their former players back in the mold again. Scott Stevens being one of them. Don't want to harp on it too long, but I think he deserves to be back in the fold somehow, working with these young kids in this defense. I think a guy like Patrick,
developmental way,
yeah, whatever, just something because guys have respect for him.
Season ticket holders.
Everybody loves him. Everybody understands his analytical work on NHL Network is unbelievable.
I learn a lot just by watching him.
Me too. He sees things that no one else sees, and because he's a defenseman in the league, it would just help the Devils. And I think Patrick Elias working with those skilled guys, it just makes so much sense to have like those three: Brylin, Elias, and Stevens, just somehow in the mold and in the mix.
And it also will help weed out where the Devils will find guys that want to stay. And I actually want to segue over to the players that could be on the chopping block, on the trading block, per se. Miles Wood, Taylor Hall, Wayne Simmons, Sammy Vatanen. Also, we're going to do a trade return on investment projection on each of the four. So we're going to try and be as honest and blunt about it as possible and explain our reasons why.
All right, so obviously the first one, it's no secret, is Taylor Hall. The Devils have to get a return on investment on this guy. He's a UFA. It just makes the most sense, and you should do it sooner rather than later because it's obvious that he's probably not going to resign in New Jersey.
So I'm going to go out there on the record. I agree with Elliot Friedman and Chris Johnson on this one that the Devils are looking at a first rounder in this year's draft, a conditional first or a regular late first, and an elite prospect and a player and a roster-ready player that has an elite level of skill. Similar to Eric Bronstrom on that level, I think if Colorado is willing to jump in, Samuel Girard might be in that package for a guy that is ready to jump in as our defenseman. Or if they want to go more defensive-minded, Nikita Zadorov, with that contract expiring, I certainly see the Devils eating up that contract.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with any of those choices. It's definitely a first. It's definitely a conditional pick. It's definitely a NHL-ready player, and it's definitely a high-level prospect. There's no bones about it.
No bones about it. Speaking of bones and forwards, I'm talking about bad boy Miles Wood. We've seen in the past where we have seen Brian Boyle go for, what was it, a fourth or a third?
Actually, I think they got a second for him.
I think it was because that third round. I recall it was a third round they got from Nashville,
Yeah, which became a
and it
second.
became a second because they advanced
Yeah,
in the playoffs. So there can definitely certainly be a Miles Wood third that could turn into a second. I can see that as a good return along with a nice AHL player for Binghamton because they need a lot of help on defense. So I do see a team in maybe not Edmonton, but definitely Calgary or Montreal that needs some size and speed. So that way, Brendan Gallagher in Montreal doesn't have to do all the hard work, and in Calgary, it'd be a lot better for someone like Monahan and Goudreau not to have problems with the third and fourth line players not being able to score and be able to alleviate the pain.
yeah. I mean, it just makes sense. I mean, but Miles Wood, he's definitely going. I just think the value's there for him. Elliot Friedman actually mentioned that last night on NHL Tonight prior to the games that he was one of those players that was definitely on the block. I mean, look, as much as I knock the guy, he has value, especially as a fourth line player. He's definitely not a top 6 player. He can get you a draft pick. He might even get you a player. Maybe you exchange a fourth line depth player for him. But there's not going to be much else that you're getting for Miles Wood.
Now, you're going to go on the record. Who would you get in return for Miles Wood?
Or
what?
So what team are we going to look at, for instance?
Let's say a team out west or out east that needs a big body.
All right, so let's take a look. Who should
Would Tampa Bay be a good fit?
Let's take a look at Tampa Bay for a minute. And if anybody heard my ringer go off, it's because people are giving me junk calls at 7:45 on a Wednesday night.
That's why I let it go to my U-mail.
Exactly. These people are ridiculous.
Unless it's the season ticket reps.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that goes to voicemail too. So, I mean, look, if you're looking at, just say, take a look in, for instance, Tampa Bay's roster right now, right? Say they're looking to upgrade a Miles Wood. Do you get a guy? Do you figure maybe a guy like Anthony Cirelli? Do you get a guy like Yanni Gourde? Is there a way you Sneal? Is he worth the value of a Palat? Is he worth a guy like a Matthew Joseph? It's hard to say.
To put in perspective, like Tampa Bay has a 7th and a 6th from Ottawa and a 4th rounder from Detroit. If I am lurking around, you could probably ask for that 4th rounder from Detroit because you can bank on Detroit being in the lottery.
Yeah.
And those numbers can go sooner in the 4th round. And you can use that pick to get a really good player in this year's 2020 draft. We'll talk about that further into December and January once the season begins to whittle down.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how quickly they're going to be trading Miles Wood. I mean, I don't know what the market is for him, but there's definitely obviously he has value. So the people are going to be looking for a guy like that.
And there's over $50 million in forwards for the Tampa Bay Lightning. and they have Patrick Maroon at $900,000. You have Anthony Cirelli at under $729,000 as an RFA, and then you have Matthew Joseph as the same amount of money. Corey Conacher is $700,000. So there are three guys you can probably pry, but two youngsters that you can really go after though.
Yeah, Matthew Joseph especially. So, and Tampa's in a cap crunch, and like it all depends on, as we talked about the other day with Hall and the Bruins. It all depends on cap, and if it goes up, it goes down. And if you saw the Maple Leafs today, they activated Mitch Marner, and they put Nick Shore on waivers yesterday, who was claimed by Winnipeg. But they sent down Nick Batan and Martin Marincin because they didn't need waivers, just to make room for Marner. And the biggest problem with the Maple Leafs is their backup goaltender, and they don't have a cap room to carry a guy that apparently the number is that the guy has to make under $1 million. He has to make close. The backup goalie needs to make at least the league minimum to fit in there.
So I want to throw this in there. Above the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys that I listed as UFA RFAs for 2020-2021 offseason.
Yeah.
The Lightning have Cedric Paquette, they have Killorn, they have Johnson, Gord, Palat, Braden Point, Stamkos, and Kucherov all tied up for the foreseeable future from 2021 all the way through 2025, 2026, as well as the middle would be 2021, 2022 season.
Okay,
so there's some surgery that Tampa Bay might have to deal with the devil.
Yeah, devil's in the details and the surgery, and so look, it's a cap crunch for a lot of these teams. Maybe do the Vegas Golden Knights come a calling on Miles Wood?
That's another team that has that Wild West run and gun type style. He could be like a poor man's William Karlsson on the bottom six for them. That big winger, a lot of speed, but his skating can get some work, and he knows John Merrill, so you would have two guys that know each other from recent years of playing. But I want to go down to the next player, Wayne Simmons. So
I think Wayne Simmons will fetch you. I think he can get you a second round pick. It depends on the team. I think he definitely brings that value. He's got a big body. He's good on the power play. He can screen a guy. He'll add value. I mean, he didn't, he's got a $5 million contract, which could be tough for some teams. But
it would be.
But, I think they're able to get something for him.
Because I'm going to read a bunch of current cap space teams right now. You have the Islanders that have $8.299 million. The Avalanche have a surplus. The Canadiens, the Jets. The Blues have somewhat with $5.287 million. And you have Nashville Predators at 4.6. But other than the Jets, you have Montreal, Colorado, and you have the Islanders as financial savvy suitors that are in the playoffs currently.
All right, so you have some teams that have cap room in the that have cap room that are in a playoff picture that could use a guy like Simmons.
And I actually think Montreal absolutely fits his style because they have a lot of I hate hitting on them because of the size issue. They don't have enough size, but they need a guy who's going to replace that Andrew Shaw. And this is a guy that can get down in the dirty areas. And I'm looking at Montreal's draft picks. They have a Chicago second rounder. They have their own second rounder. They have their own third. They have their own Montreal fourth, the Anaheim fourth, the San Jose fourth, and the Winnipeg fourth, and the fifth in the Florida Panthers, and they have their own, as well as their own sixth, and they have a Chicago seventh. I think it makes sense if the Canadians are desperate and they're willing to spend the money. They would give the Devils the Anaheim and maybe throw in that Florida fifth, and you can get maybe a player in there.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you're going to get an exact roster player from Montreal, because Montreal would have to start sending a few guys down to make room.
Yeah, and, Montreal has been tied to, Taylor Hall talks. So maybe if Hall goes to Montreal, maybe Simmons is a part of that package too.
And they would have to, and I'm also going to go on the record about Montreal, if they want to give us something really juicy in return, I would say Nick Suzuki and possibly maybe Jesperi Kotkaniemi.
Yeah.
One of the two you throw in there. And I certainly talked about his name, Mete.
Yeah, Victor Mete, who's hurt right now.
But, he's a young guy. He's going to come back. But he does have a really good structured style of defense. But I also think, Montreal has really good goaltending prospects, like Caden Primo we talked about, but I don't see him replacing Carey Price anytime soon because of that Carey Price contract.
Yeah, no one's replacing Carey Price anytime soon.
But having the idea of Caden Primo would give, maybe you swap goaltenders in that trade, but the Devils would have a more improved goaltending situation. But they could certainly, if Simmons and Hall are in that, you're looking at Montreal's first round in 2020, a first in 2021, maybe Chicago's second, Anaheim's fourth, and Montreal's third. And they could possibly upgrade depending on how Montreal does in the playoffs.
Yeah, again, I totally agree with all of that. There's nothing wrong with anything of what you said there. It makes all the sense in the world, and you have to package it right. So say you get a Nick Suzuki or Jesperi Kotkaniemi or maybe a Cole Caulfield. You don't know. But regardless of the team that they trade with, especially if we go back to Hall, a defenseman has to come back in return.
And if we were doing it with Colorado, I did say Girard and I did say Zadorov. You're looking at a roster defenseman easily, because you can't give New Jersey anything less than a solid defensive defenseman who can be physical, or a guy that can play that style of hockey that the next upcoming head coach of the Devils would want. But they would also be familiar with Ray Shero.
Yeah. And I mean, if we want to keep harping on the Colorado situation, from every indication that I see, and I've put some dots together, Colorado makes the most sense. They have the most.
Most assets?
Yeah. It just makes the most sense.
And I know it's Colorado, but I wish I could be high on this one. But my dream would be getting Cale Makar, that defenseman. But there's no way
No,
in
that's not happening.
Denver's Rocky Mountain High tune they're gonna get him.
No.
It'd be like getting the trade for Taylor Hall 1-for-1. That's how crazy it would be.
And even then, I mean, that was, and it was weird because, you know, I brought this up, you know, with a buddy of mine the other day in regards, you go back to look at go back to the trade. The Edmonton Oilers pretty much gave him up for nothing.
Like, if I call it in the investment side, that's pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
But Taylor Hall's value has shot up since that Hart Trophy season. I mean, even before it was starting to lead up, but I believe it's time for Ratio to cash in on the final sentiment of him. Sammy Vatanen.
Defenseman, see, his name is starting to come up a lot now. And, you know, it's crazy because, you know, you would think he might have been a cornerstone piece, especially since when they made the trade for Henrique. You know, he has a lot of value. He eats a lot of minutes. But he was one of those guys out in Anaheim. He was like the third guy behind Lindholm and Fowler. So he could probably get you a first-round pick and maybe a defenseman in return. Maybe a trade or a swap 1-for-1. Okay.
So,
all right, hold on real quick. So I'm listening to Sportsnet feed right now of the game, and Elliot Friedman's going to talk about Taylor Hall real quick.
Oh, goodies.
He's going to make a good deal here. The team we're watching tonight, to me, is a likely suitor to have this player, Taylor Hall, as a rental. Now, they've got some cap issues coming up. They've got some players coming up that have to be signed. They're going to have difficulty taking him.
So Brian Burke was saying that Colorado is going to be more of a suitor of a rental because they have the assets to make the trade.
We'll look at those in a second.
Ooh.
But in the meantime,
Dun, 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 dun.
Nathan McKinnon, Gabriel Landeskog, Cale Makar, all.
So Colorado does have a contract crunch ahead of him, with McKinnon being a UFA in 2023, Landeskog in 2021, and Makar RFA in 2021.
And we're talking $9.25 million right now for Rantanen.
Yeah.
Taylor Hall might be the best rental, might be a perfect fit for them. They've got cap space. Chris Pronger was that guy for us. We went out and got him, and we had a parade. This, to me, I think Colorado's close. Once they're healthy, this makes perfect sense for them.
If I was Taylor Hall and I was looking towards the summer as a free agent, I would be salivating at the idea of Colorado. And I think there's going to be some.
Elliot just backed it up. They said that if he was Taylor Hall, he'd be salivating if it was Colorado. Burke said it best. They're a piece or two away from winning now.
I think Shearer has to pull it.
It is a trade and an automatic contract extension.
No, Mark Stone was on the podcast, and he said he wanted to go to Vegas. I think Taylor Hall is open to just about anything, as long as it's a good fit for him for his future.
And a chance to win. I really believe Taylor Hall wants to go somewhere with a chance to win. Colorado fits that bill. This could be the right fit. Mm-hmm. I'm not sold on Colorado as a Stanley Cup champion because they have to beat St. Louis, and I'm not sold on their goaltenders yet.
Quickly, yes or no, does he make it to trade deadline?
No. I'm sold on Colorado.
Elliot Friedman was just asked by Jeff Marek if Hall makes it to the trade deadline. An emphatic no by Friedman. He doesn't make it to the trade deadline. The trade happens beforehand.
Didn't I say on YouTube that one day that I don't see Taylor Hall getting anywhere near February trade deadline?
No, you don't. No, you didn't. And sorry, folks, if we just went radio silent for a little bit, but I was just listening to what those guys were saying because I was listening to the Sportsnet feed of Toronto and Colorado tonight. And
for our listeners, those guys are prime time information for us people trying to bring in, this kind of information.
Yeah. And, they both feel that Colorado is a perfect destination. While Burke isn't sold on Colorado being a Stanley Cup contender, Elliot Friedman is, but they both agree that it's the right fit. And it
I
makes
also-
the most sense.
I think at average, Colorado is a Western Conference Final champion. Nothing less than that. But more, they're a Stanley Cup team in potential of acquiring Taylor Hall. I have Taylor Hall's jersey, Devils jersey, since he came to the Devils, and I would be all happy for him playing out west because he doesn't suit this timeline for the New Jersey Devils. And, excuse me, I know, dinner was just speaking. I don't see after Zajak's done by 2021 offseason with Simmons gone, Simmons is going to be gone soon. So the Devils are going to have a younger core of forwards. And if you can get a first and a second, or a first and a roster player for Sami Vatanen, that would help the Devils build things up even better.
Yeah. I mean, again, it goes back to what, Friedman said a couple of weeks ago when I was listening on TSN. How much surgery does this team want to do? How much assets do they want to do? There are pieces here to be successful. They have two great pieces to build around.
And actually, you touched on it right now. I actually want to talk about the untouchable players. So I'm going to say names. You approve or disapprove.
Okay.
Jack Hughes.
He's not going anywhere. He's untouchable.
Nico.
Untouchable.
Kyle Palmieri.
I would put him in the untouchable category because I think he just fits what the Devils are doing. He's a Jersey boy. He's home. He's having fun. He looks good. He looks comfortable. It just it's the best place for him.
Nikita Gusev, the Red Army sniper.
I mean, you just got him. You're going to give up on him that quickly? You just paid the guy $4.5 million? No, he's not.
But I'm trying to prove the other people who are listening.
No, he's untouchable. He's not going anywhere.
He's certainly fitting the system. I mean, with Hines gone, he's only going to suit the system even better.
Yeah.
And Miles Wood, we just mentioned him.
He can go.
Pavel Zacha.
You know what? He's a candidate to be on a trading block.
So he's a holder go, basically.
Yeah, he's a holder go because the thing is, again, he's a 16 draft? 15 draft.
It was the one. It was 2015 because of Provorov.
Okay, so 15 draft. So if you go back and look at the 15 draft, he was a sixth pick overall. And you look at what the guys are doing now. He should have more of an impact, and he's not. Yeah, he could go. I mean, he's not untouchable. He could be one of those guys that could be traded.
I think any team that wants a center or winger of a big body that want to exchange centers for someone who can play third line minutes certainly could trade to New Jersey for him. That certainly has more upside. Maybe it might be like a Dylan Strome type trade.
Yeah, exactly. Similar to what, and he's found new life. It's funny, the two guys that get drafted by Arizona, Max Domi and Dylan Strome, both go to hockey markets and both are finding success.
And so we move on from hockey markets to a Texan, Blake Coleman. Untouchable or touchable?
This one's tough for me. As I like what Coleman brings, I'd keep him around. He's one of those guys. He's a penalty killer. Yeah, he could stay.
Two-way power forward.
Yeah, two-way power forward.
Jesper Boqvist.
He's staying. You drafted him. I wouldn't trade him unless the right offer was there. I'd keep him.
Only way you do it is if it includes Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
Other than that, or Cale Makar, there's no way in hell I would trade him.
100% agree.
I'm gonna say this name. We're all gonna laugh. John Hayden.
Oh, John Hayden. I mean, probably put the guy on waivers. Somebody will pick him up.
he'd be free samples.
Exactly.
Jesper Bratt.
No, Bratt's part of the nucleus that you want to build around. He's still there's a lot of inconsistencies in his game, but with the right coach and the right players and the right system.
I think last night was a testament to that.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, he did beat him. He did beat Malcolm Subban cleanly. Meanwhile, Taylor Hall got shoved into Subban.
So
that was a good goal. Otherwise, Kevin Rooney.
He probably could, yeah, he can go. Waivers, exactly.
I just don't see Shiro and the new coach wanting to bring him in. So unless it's AHL,
yeah,
I just don't see his near-term future with the team. Honestly, this is a wonderful guy who we acquired via trade. PK Subban in the offseason.
You know, that's an interesting one because if the price is right, he could get traded again to a team that could use him.
There's only a few teams that could swallow.
Right, exactly. And I just don't know. And the problem is he hasn't had a point in 15 games. His power play production is down.
He needs a defensive defenseman.
He's not the same player that he was.
I like him.
I like him. It's the problem is if the Devils are like, oh well, if somebody trades for him, do they eat the contract? He probably ends up staying, but
the Devils could swallow half the contract.
Yeah, exactly.
So if let's say a team out west comes a knocking, I don't think Dallas is in the playoffs, but let's just say, for example, they want to improve their offensive defense side. Who would you give up for a team like that could possibly use his $9 million contract?
Team that could use him. I mean, the place that could use him. I mean, look, he was beloved in Montreal.
Will they take him back?
The problem is, I think there's some bad blood still there because the whole contract negotiation when he was given it, he had proven himself, but they wanted to prove him. Bergevin said, "Prove yourself even more." Gave him a bridge deal. There's some talk. There was some stuff about how he's a bad locker room guy. That's tough. That one's tough.
I mean, Pacioretty's in Vegas now. But
yeah, I mean, Pacioretty's
different story.
Completely different animal.
But I think, any team that's looking for a right-handed shot that can bomb it in and be physical and bring the energy, any team out west, I think Winnipeg would like him, especially if Dustin Byfuglien doesn't want to play anymore. You have $8 million to use.
Yeah, look, Winnipeg. I mean, the problem is Winnipeg's doing it with like nobody on defense. They're winning. So, I mean, do they really want to mess things up?
The question is, what happens after they trade for a guy, or do you think, it would be a good insurance move for them or any other Western team if the Devils can't trade within the East?
Probably would want to go Western Conference. Probably don't want to see him again. They probably unless somebody in the East needs him. But again, it's all about cap and with the way the cap is now, no one really can afford that $9 million except the Devils.
Now, I know he's the captain, but he's in his final year. Andy Green, do you want him to retire in the sunset, or do you want him to trade him to a team where he'll feel the best in the playoffs?
Look, if Green decides to waive his no-trade clause and go chase the Stanley Cup, good for him.
Yeah, he has a no trade. So
I mean, I think the thing is, I think him and Zajac are two guys that are just going to be lifers for the Devils. I think if anything, Andy Green retires as a Devil, and so does Travis Zajac.
now we talked about Sammy Vatanen.
I mean, yeah, I could see him being traded. I don't think he's an untouchable.
I think he's an intriguing piece. I think the team that looks at him has to give the Devils a really solid return. No less than a third round pick in this draft.
Whoa, that's cool.
That's how I feel about Sammy's play. He's only getting better, and he's under $5 million. I don't expect him to break more than $5.2 million in the off season.
So, just a little, just real quick. I just went on Twitter because I posted the thing. So I looked at and I got a notification, and Abby Mastracco followed me on Twitter tonight.
Oh, she did.
Yeah.
I follow her.
Yeah, so do I. And, I sent her a private message. People were getting on her case. So, I just... I gotta stick up for my fellow writers, exactly. And the fact that, people, it's not, ladies and gentlemen, just a quick thing. We try to ask our best questions. Sometimes they may not come off the best. We cannot come out and outright ask a general manager or coach why his team sucks. It doesn't work like that. We are all frustrated. But did we do our best? Anyway, segueing back to looking at guys that are untouchable or not.
So I think we already talked about Sammy Vatanen.
Yeah, Vatanen, yeah.
No less than a third on my scale.
I think you could get at least a second from him.
And Damon Severson, is he untouchable or is he worthy of keeping?
Is he? The thing is, his play he's taken such a major step backwards this year.
Do you think it's a fluke season that he can prove next season?
I think this is just a bad year. I think he's one of those guys because he's been heralded as a guy that you want to build around. If there was going to be value for him, they probably should have done it in the offseason.
I think it would have happened at this point. You keep him for another season, see where it goes.
Yeah.
And he's basically a poor man's Shea Weber.
He is. And, Shea Weber making a ton of money for Montreal, so.
I definitely think he could have bet on himself a little bit sooner. Will Butcher, I know the Devils signed him, long.
No, it was more of a bridge deal. You couldn't call it that. I call it a bridge deal because it wasn't really that long term. It was a couple of years. They bought some UFA years from him. So, I think he's a foundation on defense. He didn't sign in Colorado for a reason. He came to New Jersey. So,
and he liked the style.
He likes the style, so I keep him around.
And I don't agree with this player sticking around. He hasn't really played much. Mirko Mueller.
Yeah, no, he can go.
I'm sorry, but I think he either goes to another team in the NHL and the AHL rather, or he goes to the NLA in Switzerland.
Yeah, he's out of here.
I don't think he fits the NHL. I think there's a reason why San Jose let him go from the Barracudas.
Yeah, he's out of here.
Tennyson, I'm not quite sold on.
It's more of an AHL player to me.
Yeah, I think he gets put down after. When I say put down, I don't mean like an animal. I mean he gets sent down to the minors.
When Connor Carrick gets activated off injured reserve.
Actually, you brought me onto one of those notes from Sportsnet. They said Hughes and of course Connor Carrick are due back tomorrow on the 5th. That's their speculation.
Yeah, I mean, technically, the Devils could wait until the 6th because their game is not until Friday to make all those moves. They'll probably make a paper move tomorrow. Because I don't really see Jack Hughes missing another game. He's had, he didn't play Monday, he didn't play yesterday. He'll have today off. He has
and those maintenance days.
Right, he'll tomorrow. And so he'll be ready to go against Chicago.
And so you might see a call-up, or maybe you just see Carrick gets put back on the roster, and you see
Exactly.
maybe Rooney or Hayden gets sent down to bingo for Jack to make room.
Exactly.
Then we move into the goaltending. Louis Domingue.
Bye-bye.
Trade for Kincaid?
I don't know. Do they bring him back? I mean,
Or do you let it go to someone like Jill Sen or anyone else in the AHL?
I mean, you got to find a goaltender. Going forward, you need to find a goaltender. You need to have a veteran quality backup goaltender or starting goaltender if they want to compete.
Because Corey Schneider, I hate to say it, his time is basically done in the NHL level. I just feel that way right now after watching that shootout that he was doing in bingo. He just doesn't look the same after another one of his injuries, and he has no trade clause. And best thing you could do is expose him into Seattle or buy him out for the next few years.
Well, that's always been my speculation: is if did they expose him to Seattle, or are they just going to outright buy him out?
I think at this point, after 2021, on July 1st, when Camilleri's buyout expires on July 1st of 2021, you can certainly make that move at earliest. So it's a possibility then, but I don't think it is now. Because I'm just reading it from Cap Friendly.
Yeah, so they'll probably just wait to do it.
And do you see Mackenzie Blackwood getting a steady raise this offseason?
He's definitely gonna get a raise. How big of it is? Your guess is as good as mine. He'll probably get not a hefty amount, but he'll get a nice significant raise.
Like $888,000 maybe?
So what's he make now?
$697,500.
I think I would, I could see him making $1 million, $1.2 million.
It's keeping up with inflation. I think $1 million's perfect for him. It's not like Jordan Binnington money.
No, because Binnington won a Stanley Cup. So,
yeah. And Blackwood hasn't proven anything like that yet.
But he's clearly the goaltender for the future for the Devils.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. And to think about going forward, we talked about guys that are going to be around. There's going to be a time where Peter Horacek and Elaine Nasruddin aren't on the staff. So you got to think about, with these return on investment trades, who would they attract as a coach? If they get back in a primetime defenseman and maybe an elite, level prospect that's NHL ready, who do you think on this list of coaches that we talked about in our rankings would be most suitable?
I mean,
pressure cooker time.
Yeah, it is a pressure cooker. I mean, the most suitable for these players, the two guys that come to mind to me are Bilesma and Granato.
I have to say, if it's not Elias, it's definitely Bilesma and Granato, because the way Granato and Bilesma have been around, both the professional level and the minor level, you can see also with the way things are, money puck era. I like Granato right now, and I also think John Wroblewski would be a great assistant coach, because you would have Jack Hughes, and if you get, let's say, Cole Caulfield in a trade from Montreal, then you have that USA connection.
Yeah, and it makes the most sense. I mean, I'll go back to draft night. When Caulfield was falling, I thought the Devils were going to jump up and grab him.
I thought they would have Shiro trying to trade up in the middle area like that. I was surprised that Cole Caulfield fell that far. And anyone who's in Montreal or in Quebec or Canada listening, you got a great player. I have to say.
I mean, their future is bright. Paling's played great for Laval, and I mean, he's unbelievable. He's another player.
Another player I wish that didn't go to a rival. I know the Canadians aren't a rival, but Joel Farabee to the Flyers in the draft. I would have loved to have him if he didn't fall that far.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Exactly. It is what it is. There's not much we can go back and look at things anymore. So.
But going forward, there's a lot that Ray Shero will elaborate on in a trade. And, of course, if it is true that with Elliot Friedman speaking on tonight's show, you know, I can certainly see Colorado making Ray Shero salivate to make that move.
Absolutely. I could definitely see him
do
that. I mean, look, the other key piece was that is they also want a young defenseman out of it.
I mean, if they give us Bowen Byram, oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, that is Colorado going to want to part with Byram.
I think if the deal is perfect for Hall and they want to sign him long term, are you risking that conditional first, or are you going to give your own player that you drafted in your first round in that package along with your 2020 first?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's all crazy, and there's no guarantee that's going to resign either, because from the sound of it, it seems like when Mark Stone signed his extension, he really wanted to go to Vegas. It doesn't sound. I mean, I agree with Friedman. If I'm Hall, I would salivate playing with those guys for a long, long time. But he wants to win. It makes the most sense. Colorado's going to be a contender for a while, so it just makes the most sense. But is he going to just stick with his options?
I think if I'm Taylor Hall and I see that, you know, Colorado is that one, and you're talking to Ray Shero about it, or you're talking to Darren Ferris about it, and you say you want to sign, let's say, however many $1 million, let's say it's $9.5 million, $11 million the next season, you know, you better take the money while you have it. Meanwhile, you're in the NHL.
Exactly. I mean, look, Hall's going to be looking for some money. He wants to win. Like I said, you put the pieces together, you start playing with the dominoes. Colorado just seems to be make the most sense. And like you said, Ray Shero is going to have a lot more things to say. Coaching staff's going to have more things to say. Devils are back at it. Practice tomorrow. Game on Friday. Chicago. Should be a fun game. They always seem to play well. It's just going to be a process. You're just going to have to settle in. The first domino has fallen, and you're just going to see where things go from there. I expect the Devils aren't going to be done. I think there's more to come.
I think you're right, and I hate to cut you off on there.
No, go for it.
I mean, there's a lot of surgery to do, and with so many teams looking at the Devils as a gold mine, and the Devils will get really good assets on return and young players in return. Another player from Colorado, I think, who could possibly fit in New Jersey would be Andre Burakovsky, because he's going to want a pay raise by 2020 in the offseason. And you have them trying to pay Tyson Jost. They have to possibly pay Matt Nieto, maybe Valery Nichushkin if he wants to stay or he goes back to the KHL but he's an RFA. But you have Vladislav Kamenev, and then you have TJ Tynan. So you have those guys all within one off season, minus your defenseman. And to make matters worse for Colorado going into cap crunch, you have to pay Zadorov in the 2020 offseason, Mark Barbiero, and then you have most likely Ryan Graves, but they might throw an extension, by 2020, 2021 for Cale Makar.
Yeah, and they could even get that extension done sooner. The way he's playing, and speaking of Colorado, Nate McKinnon with a filthy goal to give the Avs 1-0 lead.
Did he do it Crosby style?
He went bar down.
Oh, I like it. The sound of bar down.
Oh.
Any of those highlights, you want to see maybe someone else on the wing, just in case if the puck doesn't go in the net right away.
So, but yeah. So again, it's like I said, recapping. Hines, he had to be let go. It's unfortunate he was a casualty, but good on the players for not bashing him. Good on the players for saying that this guy helped them, especially Hall. He said it helped them win the MVP in 2018. They still have work to do. It's not going to happen overnight. Yesterday was a step in the right direction. And just going forward, you're just going to have to be patient. And it was better. It wasn't great. And maybe the expectations were just too high on this team coming into this season.
I think what the Devils marketing has to do better is not to, like you said, overhype. And I also believe that, when season ticket salespeople are trying to push hard on potential season ticket holders, is to be honest about, going forward. And we, the fans and the listeners, know that this team has been rebuilding since, I want to say, 2013.
Yeah.
It's been prolonged until Shiro took over in 2015. So let's call that almost 5 years under Shiro. So it's basically, about 7 years plus, if you count the Lou years. So there's a lot of math and recalculating since 2015. Now that Shiro has all his guys in place, he's got to find the right head coach in the offseason and not rush it, because this is the most important. But I did tell you off the air that I do see Ray Shero not getting fired, but being promoted to a higher role in the organization and keeping Tommy Fitzgerald. And if anyone's listening, I'm a big fan of Ray Shero, even though he ran the Penguins. It was always, great to watch a bunch of Devils Penguins games before he was the GM of the Devils. I always had a respect for him, and I can't stop fathoming the template that he had in Pittsburgh. But I do want to say this, is that the future's brighter ahead, but the doom and gloom is over.
It is over. I mean, things can't get much worse. How can they? It was pretty bad on Monday night against Buffalo. I don't even want to call it a game. I think it was a slaughter.
A massacre.
Yeah. And, again, Vegas, they outplayed Vegas. They really did. A couple of bounces don't go their way. It could have been a different game. But, you be positive. Get a new staff. Horacek's there. New coach, players, a different voice. It's just something that they need. And as I said before, it's something like with Toronto, just a new voice, maybe with a similar message, but a new voice. It'll help them and get the most out of these players. And the best thing Rishiro said yesterday was that the players need more from themselves. There needs to be more accountability from them. And now it's on them because Hines is gone, and it's now on them to perform.
And now their feet is in the fire right now. I don't mean literally, I mean figuratively, to the point that, the guys who aren't performing, you're going to see transactions made ASAP. I could see within the first 5 games, whoever falters then begins to have less job security than the other guy that they're losing their spots with. But I do see the way Jesper Boqvist is playing that he's going to continue heating up, and having him play with a fellow countryman, Jesper Bratt, will only help him get better. And you can put this in your last word on hockey blog right there. I think it would be perfect to use it since there's a change in the guard. That's actually going to be the title for tonight.
Yeah, I think I like the way Boqvist has played the other night. I like the way he's been playing. He looks good on that top line. He really does. But again, skilled players playing with skilled players, and that's something I've been harping on. And it all goes back even to the days with Nino Niederreiter and the Islanders. You can't expect production from a guy when he's not put in a situation to succeed.
And I actually thought Niederreiter would have gotten traded to the Devils last year.
Yeah, so, I mean, again, Boqvist put in a position to succeed.
And
that's all it is.
And I will also say this, this is a blessing in disguise. I know it's the holiday season, but using those phrases for people who haven't quite heard them on a show, we've gone through some dark times, this season and last season, and having, kids like Hughes and Hischier being able to, connect with one another on and off the ice, knowing that they have a new coach, slightly new coach, but a better philosophy. And as long as the new interim coach can harness the art of war where you can be more principled and more structured and be a lot wiser and manage the puck better, there's going to be a lot of competitive hockey. And we started seeing a little bit of that last night.
Yes, we did. And it's good to see. And the Devils are moving in the right direction. And you could see the disappointment on Shiro's face because he thought this team would be better because he put a competitive team on paper. But they just didn't play well. Everything that could go wrong went wrong.
And you can see in his face and in Nasrudin's face, Nasrudin was just keeping it cool and he was unsure about certain things. But at the same time, he knew that he had to lead a team of 23 men. And he also was able to keep everyone calm, cool, and collected within under 2 hours, basically. Having Hines gone, it's a blessing under fire. So I guess I made a reference to what was that movie, The Godfather.
Yes, great movie.
One of the best tri-state area films that most people don't think about.
Yeah, I mean it's a great film. It really is.
But you don't want to think Hines is Jimmy Hoffa though. Just
No.
talking about The Irishman.
Great another great film.
But I think there's enough of those tri-state references. I'm not talking about conspiracy theories. I'm just making a slight joke from a few movies that has to do with the tri-state area. But I want to tell our Devils fans and hockey listeners that, as bad as it's been, I believe this team has bottomed out to the point it's gonna shoot back up.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, the darkest before the dawn. How many times can you hit rock bottom? But they definitely have, and I mean, there was no choice but to make this coaching move. Somebody had to take the fall. Unfortunately, John Hines got in the way. It usually goes on the coaching staff. It never goes on. I mean, the players definitely have to perform better now. It's on them.
And you saw the text I sent you that I basically highlighted those coaches, and I know Peter DeBoer had a better winning percentage than John Hines, but John Hines ended up somehow getting the second most wins in Devils history, but he did not win a Stanley Cup at all. He fell short in the playoffs. I'll give him the playoffs part where he got one win in 5 games, but still nowhere near Jacques Lemaire, Pat Burns, or any of those other guys.
I gotta say one thing in closing before we wrap it up because my phone's about to die. I will say there's one thing I will point to, and that is back during the playoff run in 2018, Devils were making a run. They clinched the playoff spot. They still have 1 game to play against the Capitals. I still say it to this day. I put it out there on Twitter. Chris Wassel picked it up too. He agreed with me. The Devils should have never rested players against the Capitals. You always carry momentum into the playoffs. That was the one thing that Hines did wrong during that playoff run because you could see it against Tampa Bay in the first 2 games. The Devils did not have the same step they had at the end of the regular season. If they had played through Washington and then had the days off, it might have been a different series. Not to say they were going to win, but it would have been a lot more competitive than it was.
Or else I would have been at the next Devils game with my coworker because his parents that season were season ticket holders.
Right. So I'm just saying, I said it back then. I'll take it with me now. I'm not backing off of that stand.
I have to agree with you. I just didn't know why he did that, but I know we're gonna start wrapping it up like a holiday present that gets delivered under the tree or the menorah, whatever you think about this season, this holiday season that is. Festivus for the rest of us, with more podcasts to come, and maybe we will package Taylor Hall somewhere.
Maybe we will. You never know. He might be gone before the holidays.
Well, he's checking it once. He's checking it twice. He's going to see who has assets or not.
Exactly.
Cyril Klaus is coming to town. All right, everybody.
All right. Have a good night,
All right,
everybody.
peace.
Peace.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.